Someone vanishing from our lives is always haunting. There are unanswered questions and a yearning that never ends for those left behind. Sadly, the Jack family's loved ones would experience this with the loss of a whole family. On August 1st, 1989, young parents Ronald and Doreen would disappear along with their two sons in Prince George, British Columbia, after being picked up by an unknown man with the promise of a job that they desperately needed. So what really happened to the Jack family? Hello and welcome to another episode of Truly Twisted. As always, I'm your host, Alicia Watson, and every Thursday I will be bringing you a story that is always victim-focused and fact-based. I have a story for you out of my home province today that is truly unsettling. The disappearance of an entire family, the Jack family. So let's get into it. Ronald Jack, 26, was born on March 29, 1963. He was a member of the Cheslada Carrier Nation along with his wife, Doreen. Doreen Jack was born on April 24, 1963, and according to her sister Maria, their early life was tough. Their parents weren't really around, and they had been abused physically and sexually by members of their community. And they were sent to the Jack residential school for a few years. When the school was closed in 1976, Doreen went to a live-in Catholic school where she would meet Ronald. At just 17, Doreen found out that she was pregnant, and although the baby was not Ronald's, he loved Doreen and the baby like it was his own. And a boy, Russell, was born on February 28, 1980. Ronald and Doreen lived with Ronald's parents in South Bank, British Columbia, in order to save money and help with the baby. His parents were happy to help, and 5 years later, Doreen and Ronald would welcome their second son, Ryan, on July 26, 1985. Now, up until this point, things were going well for the young family, but they did fall on hard times. This was a rural area, and sadly, Ronald had lost his job at a sawmill that he worked for after he injured his back and had to take some time off work. The family then decided to move to Prince George. It was a slightly bigger city than South Bank, and they were hoping that it would bring more opportunity for them. According to Doreen's sister, Ronald became angry and had hit her in front of her on one occasion, and Doreen began to drink more in order to cope with the family's struggles. Debts were quickly increasing for the young family, and despite the move, Ronald was still having a hard time finding work. On August 1st, 1989, Ronald was at the First Leader pub, which was a few blocks away from the home that the family rented. An unknown man approached Ronald after overhearing his hardships and said that he could get him work for him and his wife at a logging camp about 40 kilometers away. He explained that it would be for 10 days and that there would be a daycare to look after the kids while Ronald and Doreen were working. Honestly, it seemed like the answer to the family's prayers, so Ronald quickly agreed. However, the Jack family did not own a vehicle, so they wouldn't have any way of getting there, so the man offered to take them the next morning. Ronald left the pub at around 11:16 p.m. and returned home to begin packing. On August 2nd, Ronald talked to both his brother and his mom on the phone and told them about the opportunity and how long the family would be gone for. They then loaded up in the early morning hours of the man's dark pickup truck to leave. Now, this mystery man was described by pub patrons as a white man in his late 30s, who was between 6 feet and 6'6". He weighed between 200 and 275 pounds. He had reddish brown hair and a full beard and was wearing a ball cap, a red checkered work shirt, faded jeans, blue nylon jacket, and work boots with leather fringes over the toes. Definitely a memorable outfit if I say so myself. When Ronald didn't contact his mom again by late August, a few weeks after the family should have been back, she reported them as missing. Initially, the Prince George RCMP were hesitant in the search, according to the family. They do believe that this is because of their indigenous background, and I also believe that that's why many of us haven't heard about this case more often. The RCMP searched the home that the family rented and found most of their belongings, along with Ryan and Russell's school records. The boys were set to start school that September. A composite sketch was then issued of the man that the Jack family left with in hopes that somebody may know something or have any information about this alleged job and logging camp. On September 7th, 1989, the family was incorrectly reported as being located safely, and the RCMP actually closed the case for a period of time, which is terrible and lost obviously valuable time in the investigation. A year later, the Jack family's disappearance was featured on Crime Stoppers, with a reward of $2,000 being offered for any information leading to the family's whereabouts. Ronald's family did fundraising as well and took every opportunity to get the family's disappearance talked about and out into the world, because somebody always knows something. It doesn't matter that this happened 36 years ago. Their loved ones deserve answers on what happened to their family, and to know if they're even still alive. Ryan and Russell never got the opportunity to grow up. Doreen and Ronald were just young parents at 26 years old with so much life ahead of them. So what happened to them? Nearly 7 years later, the most significant tip about the Jack family's disappearance came in on Sunday morning in January. On January 28th at 8:30 a.m., a man in Stony Creek, British Columbia, called the Vanderhoof police with a brief message. The Jack family are buried in the south end of unintelligible ranch, end quote. It was over in 10 seconds and the caller hung up before dispatch could ask any further questions. Investigators published several appeals in the local newspapers asking for the person to call back in, and they even planned to release the caller's voice in hopes that somebody may recognize it. In March of 1996, the voice recording was analyzed by the University of British Columbia, and although police were eventually able to trace the call to a home in Vanderhoof, there was a house party taking place during the time frame of the call, and it's unclear if the caller was ever identified from what I was able to find in records. Over the years, the RCMP have conducted hundreds of interviews and searches, with the most recent being 2019 at a property in South Vanderhoof on the reserve. They used heavy equipment to dig up various sites and ground-penetrating radar, but nothing has ever been found. Honestly, this story is deeply upsetting, and I hope that the missing piece that the RCMP need is uncovered soon. And I do hope that you all enjoyed this week's episode. Remember to leave 5 stars wherever you are listening now. It really is the best way to spread the word. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss the next release. Now for a moment for the missing. Now, this feature is actually quite close to where I live. I have seen her missing posters up. Police in Surrey are asking for the public's help in locating 36-year-old Morgan Nicholson. She was last seen on December 18, 2025, on the 157 and 97th block around 4 p.m. She has not been seen or heard from since, and police and her family are very concerned for her well-being. Morgan is described as Caucasian, approximately 5'4", and weighing around 160 pounds. She has light brown hair and brown eyes, and a Hawaiian-style tattoo on her right arm with Chinese symbols on her right wrist and a music note tattoo on the left side of her neck. If anyone has any information about her whereabouts, please call 604-599-0502. And that is it for this week. I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. I will see you again next Thursday for another case. And in the meantime, remember, you are wanted, you are loved, and you deserve to be here. And I will see you next week.